Hello and welcome to Below the Rim Basketball. I am your host, Quinn Carey, and this is episode number 2 of Below the Rim Basketball. And if you are here watching on YouTube, if you found me and you're watching this video, just want to say I really appreciate it. A million thanks to you. Again, I am a former college hooper, just a total hoop head, and I also have my degree in broadcast journalism from SUNY Oswego in New York State. And I'm currently living out in Spokane, Washington, working for one of our local news organizations. So I thought this would be an awesome opportunity just to put my voice out there in the world of sports media and hopefully start to grow something here on this channel. So just wanted to say thank you again for being here. Again, here on Below the Rim Basketball, we're talking all things hoops, primarily focusing on men's and women's college basketball, but also dabbling in some NBA, WNBA topics. And who knows, maybe I'll screw up my sleep schedule even more at some point and just get into EuroLeague so we can cover literally all things basketball. But until that day, we're going to stick with what's going on here in the U.S. in the basketball world. And I wanted to hop on here today. John Rothstein, if you know who John Rothstein is, which if you're a college hoops fan, you know who John Rothstein is, inside reporter, covers college basketball extensively, one of the best in the business. He has a term that he's phrased, along with many others, that he puts on t-shirts and all the fun stuff, but he calls it Portal Kombat. And with this current state of the transfer portal, with it closing in about 10 days here, it just is exactly what it feels like is Portal Kombat. There's so much news, so many guys moving around, so many familiar faces going to new places, so many guys that some of us haven't really heard of that much that are going to either mid-majors or higher major schools from those low majors. And so just a whole ton of news that is way too much to fully get into here, but there's a few things that I wanted to kind of touch on, a few key names. I want to get into some dark horse kind of sleeper portal guys that obviously we know the big ones, we see the big names and going to the big schools, but some of these guys coming from smaller schools that haven't had a chance to be seen by as many eyeballs, want to get into some of those guys who we might be able to see have a Dalton Connect, Chaz Lanier type impact that we've seen in recent years here. So to start things off, big news before we get into kind of those guys, big news in the transfer portal that I saw over the last 2 days since we last talked is Trayson Eaglestaff, the kid from North Dakota. He was in the transfer portal. He can just fill it up. I love watching that kid. I love my mid-major and small major hoops, so had a chance to watch some of that Summer League conference tournament, watch North Dakota a little bit, and this kid can freaking fill it up. He scored 41, I want to say it was against Kansas, and then he's dropped 50 when he was playing South Dakota State when they were in their Summit League Conference tournament. So this kid can just light it up. He can fill it up. He's one of the highest sought-after prospects in the transfer portal and had originally committed to South Carolina, which I think would obviously a big jump from North Dakota. Sounds about right. And from what I'm seeing, well, not from what I'm seeing, but he is decommitted to South Carolina. Saw that on his page from what I'm seeing. Looks like there's some other players behind the scene. Potentially take a look at Mark Pope and Kentucky because they missed out on a guy we'll talk about later, Lamar Wilkerson, and they missed out on him. All of a sudden, Trayson Eaglestaff decommits. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe Mark Pope and Kentucky are trying to make a run at him. I'm here in Spokane, Washington, so he's a guy that I would love to see the Zags go and get. Gonzaga, I think he would fit their style. I think he would fit right in. I think he would give them some shooting and some offense that, not that they necessarily needed, but would go in and replace some of the guys that they're losing here in Gonzaga. So I would love to see him there. But again, keep your eyes peeled for Kentucky, and that's a big name. Trayson Eaglestaff, somebody we're probably going to be hearing a lot about as the year goes on. A couple other transfer items. UConn, are they reloading? I would say probably so. You know, Danny Early's not going to keep that program down where it was this past year for very long. He's too competitive. He's too good of a coach. Well, self-proclaimed best coach in the game. I don't know about that, but he's absolutely right up there with all of the top guys in college basketball, no doubt. And he's a fiery competitor. So I have a feeling that this season left a pretty bad taste in his mouth. So I wouldn't be shocked if we see UConn reload, as we already are with Malachi Smith, the Dayton transfer, who's again one of the higher sought-after transfers in the country. He committed to UConn, so he's going to be going there, joining Danny Hurley's staff and getting those Huskies trying to be ready for another run here coming in 2025, 2026. And then another big one in the SEC for Ole Miss, Chris Beard and Ole Miss picked up A.J. Storr, who's coming from Kansas, formerly Michigan State, then Kansas, had kind of a down year this year, just weird stuff happening there with the Kansas Jayhawks, not a typical Kansas Jayhawks season. So don't know what the issue was there with him. He never really meshed, never quite fit in there, never made a big role for himself really while in his time there. So he's entered the portal, big name obviously, and he's going to be joining Chris Beard and Ole Miss, who I'm a big fan of. Chris Beard, Ole Miss, obviously we all saw in the tournament just a few months ago. They can really play, they can defend, they get out and they play fast. So hopefully that style, I think, will lend itself a little bit better to Storrs' kind of way he plays than what Kansas kind of was this year, even though they're similar in some senses. But I just think he's going to be better suited with Chris Beard there in Ole Miss. So that's a big one. And then two more notes for you before I get into some of these sleepers that are in the portal is I saw Xavier Lee, the Princeton transfer, has been visiting a couple places, but I saw most recently he was at the University of Florida, reigning national champs. Looks like they went freaking all out. They had him at some bougie-looking club with bottle service going and all this stuff, and then he posted a photo with the hashtag not committed, and you had a bunch of these Florida Gators that we just saw in the tournament all commenting on it, like, why does it say not committed, question mark, that type of stuff. So there's seemingly some buzz. Again, everybody wants this kid, anyone who he's willing to go to, because he did have he entered the portal with some sort of tag of do not contact. He knows where he wants to go. Obviously a very smart kid if he went to Princeton, so he probably had an idea of the schools he was looking at, and he's going to make a decision between those. And it feels to me like Florida, one, would be a great fit. Two, just based off the video and photo evidence I've seen, seems like he had a great time. Seems like they did a great job pitching the school to him and pitching Gainesville to him. So I wouldn't be shocked to see Xavier Lee sign with Florida. That's what I expect will be coming here in the next couple days. But who knows? It is madness right now, so you just never quite know with these guys. And then last note, there's a couple other main transfers going on here, but a story that I found that was interesting is UCF down in Orlando, Florida. They had a decent season last year. They were solid, but they are literally losing their entire roster. They're losing 4 guys to graduation, and then the other 9 guys are all in the transfer portal right now. So given that they all end up somewhere, some of them already have committed, but given that they all end up somewhere new, UCF is going to have a literal brand new 12, 13-man roster for this next season, which is just absolutely nutty. I don't know if I've ever seen that before, that type of turnover. Obviously, like we talked in the last episode, things are changing. It's becoming much more European now with all this NIL, with guys moving around year to year. But you replace an entire roster is pretty wild. So I have never seen anything like that. Thought that was worth mentioning. Just kind of one of those crazy stories that you're seeing right now in the world of NIL. So, and then as I shift gears here, as I get into kind of the main bulk of what I wanted to talk about here, obviously, if you follow college basketball, you're kind of tracking the portal, you're tracking some of the bigger schools, and we know a lot of these names. A lot of these guys, like RJ Lewis at St. John's, he's in the transfer portal. He's declared for the NBA draft, but also maintaining his eligibility so he can come back and potentially transfer, maybe potentially go back to St. John's. I'm not really sure how that works once you've entered the portal and entered the draft, all this stuff. So that's going to be super interesting to watch. But guys like him, we know those names. We've seen those names. And so I want to give you 3 guys here that I think are kind of under the radar transfers. And we saw Chaz Lanier come out of North Florida. We saw Dalton Connect come out of Northern Colorado and transfer, both transferred to Tennessee. And we just saw our guard from Florida, Walter Clayton, come from Iona and then transfer down to Florida, had great success. So looking to see who might be one of those type of players going into this year that might come from one of those mid-major, small major schools and make a huge impact. And then all of a sudden we're talking about them in March and saying, where the heck did this kid come from? Like, yada, yada, yada. And to start, the first one, I mentioned him earlier, is Lamar Wilkinson. He's probably, if I had to guess from what I've been able to tell, he's probably the most sought after kind of mid-major, low-major transfer prospect coming out of Sam Houston State. He's going over to Darren DeVries and the Indiana Hoosiers, which is a huge, huge get for Indiana. Indiana kind of trying to bolster what they once were, kind of get back to their former glory. It's been a long time coming. It's been some ugly years up there in Bloomington. But Darren DeVries coming over from West Virginia. If you watched last episode, you heard me talk about Iowa's new coach, Ben McCollum, who was also at Drake. Darren DeVries also was at Drake before taking the West Virginia job and then needing to be replaced by McCollum. But did such a good job there. A lot of controversy about them getting into the tournament. So he's now at Indiana, bringing in Lamar Wilkerson, which I think is going to be a huge, huge, huge impact for him. Averaged nearly 21 a game, shot 45% from three. So that's going to be a huge get for Indiana. He's kind of a do-it-all guy, can really score, can really fill it up, can obviously light it up from downtown, and can stretch it, can get to the basket. He's got good size, so he's going to be a super, super valuable transfer. I think Indiana could see themselves kind of on the rise, similar to where Iowa, as we talked about on Tuesday, it's sort of the same position that they're in, where we could see them kind of make a huge jump from where they've been the last couple of years, given the coach, and then Lamar Wilkerson coming in is going to be a game changer for them. I anticipate, honestly, much like a Walter Clayton type impact, where all of a sudden this kid comes out of a school where vast majority of people have never heard of, and just lights it up, makes a huge impact to the point where we all know his name, climbs up draft boards, gets himself some draft stock to potentially go to the NBA or eventually go overseas and have a great overseas career. But I think we're going to see a huge impact from him. I'm a big, big fan. As I said earlier, I love my low major and small major basketball, so getting a chance to, I didn't watch a ton of Sam Houston State games this year compared to my other ASUN teams and the MAC teams and some of those lower level conferences that I really enjoy watching. But I just know this kid can fill it up. Had a chance to watch a couple of games, and just at that level, it was apparent that this is by far the best guy in the court. Looked like an NBA guy in those games that I saw. So huge, huge get for Indiana, who also is bringing over Tucker DeVries, Coach DeVries' son, who is just a pure sharpshooter, sniper, and getting a little bit better off the bounce and some of those things from what I've seen of his time at West Virginia and at Drake. But just kid can just shoot it, so it's going to be some spacing, open things up for Wilkerson, and I think Indiana is going to, I don't know if they're going to be in serious contention come March time, whether or not they even make the tournament, but I think we're going to see a major turnaround from last season and where they've been for a handful of years. It feels like it's been a while since we've had a really, really dominant, good Indiana basketball team. So very excited about that. Lamar Wilkerson, Darian DeVries, already doing an incredible job recruiting guys in this era of NIL. That's kind of what half of the battle is getting good recruits in. So he can do the X's and O's, and now he's got some Jimmies and Joes. So very excited for Indiana. Lamar Wilkerson, Darian and Wilkerson screwing me up a little bit here today, but keep your eyes on him and keep your eyes on Indiana going into this year. My next one, actually coming out of the same conference as Chaz Lanier did last year, out of the Atlantic Sun. Again, I watch a ton of Atlantic Sun basketball. My brother is a graduate of North Florida, spent some time in Jacksonville, Florida, so I love the A-Sun. I love watching those schools. And there's a kid by the name of Adrian Woolley who's coming out of Kennesaw State in the transfer portal, the Owls, and he is going to be transferring to Louisville to play for Pat Kelsey. And so that's going to be a huge, huge, huge addition for Louisville. This kid was one of the most dynamic freshmen in the country. Again, as a freshman, he averaged 19 points a game, 5.2 rebounds, 3.6 assists on 31% shooting from three, and he shoots 60% of the rim. So when he's getting to the hoop, he's scoring at a super efficient clip, and then obviously stepping out behind the three-point line, he can stretch it, keep the defense honest, he can shoot it at such a high clip, and that kind of opens everything up for him. So this kid is somebody that's just kind of dynamic, does it all for him. Going to be joining Pat Kelsey over at Louisville, who, again, Pat Kelsey coming from Charleston, just knew he had Charleston running essentially like a Power 5 program for those time that he was there, would win 30 games, very similar to how Drake was this past year with Ben McCollum, and even during the stretch under Darian DeVries. Very similar type of impact that Coach Kelsey had at Charleston, and now he's at Louisville. We saw the turnaround that Louisville made in a single year, going from that kind of dumpster fire 3-4 years into making the tournament and just turning around, winning 20-plus games. So this kid, Adrian Woolley, is going to go right in there. I think Pat Kelsey knows how to work with mid-major talent, as he did at Charleston, and knows really how to get the most out of those kids. And you're bringing in a kid who is arguably one of the more talented players that he's had in a long, long time. So I'm very excited to see how that goes. Adrian Woolley, sad to see him leave the Atlantic Sun selfishly. However, very excited to see what he does at Louisville. Super excited to see him in that system. Super excited to see him under Coach Kelsey. and super excited just to see that sophomore year jump because his freshman year was pretty remarkable and pretty spectacular. So to see that jump is going to be great. And then Louisville is also bringing in alongside him. Let me take a look here in my notes. 2 sharpshooters, Ryan Conwell from Xavier, and then Isaac McNeely is coming in. So those 2 guys added with Adrian Woolley. I think Pat Kelsey already has Louisville kind of retooled and reloaded from where they were before he got there. But now I think he's just taken the next step and he's going to keep building that. So super, super excited to watch Louisville this year for the first time, honestly, since Pitino was there. I'm excited to watch Louisville. And I think that they are honestly a fringe, again, way too early before we know how everything shakes out, injuries and different things. But I see them as a top 5 team in the country going into next season. Just between him, the transfer players that they have coming in, the returning players that they have, I just see nothing but positives for Louisville right now. So super excited to watch them. Super excited to see these transfers, how they fit into Coach Kelsey's system. And super excited for Adrian Woolley, again, coming from Kennesaw State. Somebody that I think could have a, Chaz Lanier style impact, kind of plays that similar position. So I could see that being really, really good for Louisville. And I'm just very excited to watch that team, see what they do in the ACC. And then my last one for you here is a guy who hasn't committed anywhere yet, so I still don't know where he's going. And in fact, I wanted to hop on here because just about 3-4 hours ago, the news broke of this. But we have St. Louis guard Isaiah Swope has entered the portal, which is huge news. I'm actually a little shocked to see him leaving St. Louis. Given as late as it is, I assumed he was probably staying put. Who knows what the NIL situation there is. However, he has now entered the transfer portal, and so he is probably going to be another one of those top guards that is just super, super sought after. People are going to be coming heavy after him right now, trying to get them on their team, and I just see him being a huge impact guy. Another guy that I could see being a little bit similar to Walter Clayton, honestly. Again, I keep going back to that comparison because it's so fresh on the brain, and when you're guard and you have that chance to come in and you can fill it up, you can have that type of impact, particularly going to a higher level school with higher level athletes and talent around you. All of a sudden that can take you from, you're a really, really good mid-major player that can stuff the stat sheet and fill it up and score, to, oh my God, you are a starter and arguably the best player on a potential national championship contender, not necessarily winner for all these guys, but I see these guys going to schools that are going to contend next year and are going to compete. So don't be surprised if you hear these names come next season. Super excited for it. Already super, super excited for next year's tournament. And we barely even gotten to the freaking NBA playoffs yet. So super excited for that. I can't wait to see that. But also, just again, those are 3 guys, Isaiah Swope, Lamar Wilkerson, and Adrian Woolley, who are all in the transfer portal, have not been as much talked about. Lamar Wilkerson has been seeing a little bit more buzz around recently, but just have not seen the same hype as some of the higher name transfer recruits and prospects are mentioned. So wanted to give those guys shout outs. Super excited to see what the impact is that they make, and just super excited once again to get our college basketball season underway already. All right, so moving on, a couple things I want to touch on. I am going to give you guys my NBA first round playoff predictions. So if you want to fade me, tail me, and do whatever you want on those, that's coming up here in just a second. But I want to touch a couple notes on women's basketball and between the college and WNBA. Biggest thing that's going on right now is WNBA Draft just happened. Had a chance to watch that, see Paige Beckers go number 1 to nobody's surprise at all. Really solid draft, though. A team that I'm interested in is the Washington Mystics, actually, for the WNBA, because they kind of loaded up. I think they had 3 of the top 6 or 7 picks is what it was. So they got some really talented players going to Washington that I'm super excited about watching and super excited to see how that goes for them. Might have to get a ticket when they play out in Seattle against the Storm and go see Dominique Malunga play against those new rookies in Washington. But on the side note of that, one really cool thing that I saw was very similar. If you watched it all, the WNBA draft last year, which I know a lot of people did with Caitlin Clark, but Caitlin Clark's teammate, Kate Martin, attended to support her, be there in the stands to watch, and then ended up herself getting drafted and going to the league and going to the Las Vegas Aces, who were reigning champs. She's now been moved to the Golden State expansion team, which oddly enough, UConn teammate of Paige Beckers, who was the number 1 overall pick this year, Caitlin Chen, who was super instrumental. I had a chance again to see her play in Spokane here for their regionals before they made the Final Four. just an awesome, knows how to play the game, always making the right decision, always making the right pass, knocks down her open shots. So she was there last night at the WNBA Draft, doing the same thing that Kate Martin was literally a year ago, and just being there supporting Paige Beckers, just being there for all the festivities. And then with the 30th pick, the new team to the WNBA, the Golden State Valkyries, they picked her with the 30th overall pick, which is awesome. So now she'll be going to the NBA. Congrats to Caitlin Chen. Huge shout out to her. And really just funny to me because it was very, very similar to the Kate Martin situation last year. And now those two are going to be teammates in Golden State after this expansion draft happened. Kate Martin got plucked from Las Vegas, ended up in Golden State, and she will now be joined with fellow draft supportee / drafty Caitlin Chen, which I just think is really cool. So shout out to those two. Shout out to Caitlin Chen for getting your name called. I know that's probably a dream come true and well-deserved by her. So that was really, really cool. And then other women's basketball note, as I just kind of touched on, really buried the lead. Washington Mystics, I think, are one of those teams that can make a big jump this year. Obviously, I think the Indiana Fever, like I talked on Tuesday, they're going to have a huge jump with Caitlin Clark going into year 2. And they also brought in just a ton of veteran players and good veteran players. So that's going to be super exciting to watch. But I also think the Washington Mystics are probably 1 to maybe 3 years away from kind of hitting where they're one of the forces in the league. But with 3 awesome draft picks, Kiki Eurofan, Georgia Amore, and Citrin from Notre Dame. Once again, I'd probably butchered that last name. Always forget it. But those 3 all taken within the top 6 or 7 picks for the Mystics. I think adding a ton of talent in one draft is really exciting for Washington. Might have to give me a Mystics jersey at some point because I love Georgia Amore coming out of Texas and Virginia Tech Kentucky and Virginia Tech before that. Just a big fan, so very excited about that. Washington Mystics, keep your eye on them in the WNBA. And that leads me to my final thing that I want to get into here. Tuesday night started the NBA play-in games with the Warriors taking down the Grizzlies. And then yesterday we had the Magic taking out the Hawks, to no surprise. But so that was a lot of fun to watch. But now our playoff brackets outside of our 8 seeds are officially set. And shocker, I'm not picking either of the 8 seeds, no matter who wins, to win their first round. So I wanted to go through, give you my NBA first round playoff predictions before all those games in the series start this weekend. I want to go on record with who I have and how many games. And feel free to tail, fade, take this advice, take it to your bookies and put some money on these first round matchups, or don't. Probably not the most advisable coming from my opinions. However, this is what I'm going to give to you, and we'll go through it. Feel free to comment below if you disagree. All right. We're going to start the East because I'm a Western Conference guy, and I think the Western Conference is a little bit harder to predict. So starting in the East with the Cavs and whatever 8th seed they play, I've got the Cavs going. Probably going to be a sweep or a gentleman's sweep. Cavs just play so freaking hard. They play so well together. I don't see any of the potential 8 seeds in the East even really giving them a fight. I think those teams are probably, a lot of those players are ready for vacation, are ready to get a couple extra paychecks for some playoff games and then get themselves into the offseason. So I see the Cavs taking down that 8 seed. And then we have Boston 2 versus Orlando 7, decided after the playing game with Orlando beating Atlanta. And while this one, I am picking Boston. I'm not going to go against the Celtics. I think the Celtics are coming out of the East, but I do think that the Magic are up and coming. I think they're starting to play their basketball at the right time. I think they're starting to play really good basketball. They dealt with a lot of injuries, just kind of a lot of weirdness throughout the early, middle portions of the year, have really started playing well down the stretch. They probably would not be the 7 seed if they didn't have some of those injuries in the start that they had. So I think they're a tougher 7 seed than people give them credit for. But again, I am going to pick the Celtics. I'm going to pick them in 6. I think I see Orlando winning 2 games in the series. And then a very similar one for me is the Knicks. I have them beating Detroit. And I also have that in 6 games. I know a lot of people think that the Knicks are just going to cruise through them like a hot knife through butter. But I think this Pistons team is feisty. I think they're scrappy. I think they're a little bit too young and too inexperienced to take down New York, even though New York has not done a whole ton of anything in the playoffs. So it wouldn't necessarily be the biggest shock to me if Detroit won this series. I am going to stick with New York. Once again, I'm picking them in 6 like I did with the Celtics. But I think Detroit's going to give them kind of a fight more than people are expecting. And I wouldn't be shocked if you see Detroit, pull like a game 1 win, something like that, to put a lot of pressure on, and then have the Knicks eventually win 4 out of 5 games or something like that. But I see Detroit putting a little bit of pressure on New York, giving them some trouble. Ultimately, I do think Jalen Brunson is probably going to be the difference. It'd be too much for them. They've struggled against him this year when they've played. So picking the Knicks over Detroit in 6. And then I'll be totally honest, I had no freaking clue what to pick in Indiana and Milwaukee. Both these teams are a little odd to me. And again, the 4-5, there's a reason why it's so tight and it's hard to predict. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with the Pacers in 7. I think the Pacers are going to win a home game 7. And I think that is going to be my first hot take, is that will lead, I don't even know if this is a hot take, but that will lead to Giannis getting out of there this offseason, going somewhere new, and exploring options and joining a new team. So I got the Pacers in 7, the Knicks in 6, Boston in 6, and the Cavs in 4 or 5. You pick it. I don't think that's going to be a competitive series, so wouldn't be shocked at all if it was a clean sweep. All right, moving over to the Western Conference. No surprises here. I've got Oklahoma City beating their 8 seed. I have that going in 5 games. As I look at that, when I read it, it's probably going to be 4 games. I think Oklahoma City is going to come out rested. Not that they need it as young as they are, but they're going to come out rested. They're going to come out firing, and I could just see them burying whoever ends up in that 8 spot. Probably going to be a sweep. I put a gentleman's sweep here just because of my respect for the Western Conference as a whole. But I got OKC moving on. I got the Lakers over Minnesota, and I've actually got that one happening in 5 games. I think the Lakers might clean that series up pretty quickly, move through it pretty quick. I think you're going to see some big performances from Anthony Edwards throughout there. You're probably going to see 1, maybe 2 games in there where he just kind of takes over, and that's the difference, and Minnesota gets their wins. But I don't see them stopping Reeves, Luka, LeBron. LA is such a great offensive team. Minnesota is such a great defensive team, but not quite as good as they were last year for whatever reason. Exactly, they got rid of Towns, and Towns wasn't the best defender, so you think that would have helped. But their defense just hasn't seemed quite as good this year as it was last year when they were taking down Jokic and the Nuggets in the second round. So I've got the Lakers going through them relatively easily, and I've got them winning in 5. So got that one. This one's hard for me. The next one, Golden State, Houston. As if you listen to the first episode, I'm a Golden State fan. That's Steph Curry is my guy. That's the player and team that I root for more than any other team in the NBA. For no reason. I'm not from there, but I just love Curry, and how can you not? So I'm really, really, really rooting for them. I think they could be in a little bit of trouble here with Houston. Watching their playing game, watching that regular season finale against the Clippers, just a lot of red flags. They look a little old, to be quite honest, even with playoff Jimmy and Steph going crazy like he did in that play-in game. They were able to scrape by and get past Memphis, but Memphis never should have been in that game. Golden State's up 20 in the first half. You're going into halftime. That's where you should put it away, make Memphis. Ja's got a rolled ankle. Just put them away, put them to sleep, literally like Curry does with his night-night, and just be done with it. But they effed around. They had their stupid turnovers. They're just not great defensively. They struggle to defend, and so when you can't defend, teams are going to keep scoring and make their runs. Even if you're up 20, all of a sudden, I think it was down to 12 at halftime or something like that within a matter of a couple minutes. So I really worry about Golden State. All of that, and Houston, the way they defend. Houston just held Curry to 3 points just the other day, about a week and a half ago. And I think Ime Udoka is a super underrated coach. Obviously, his time at Boston didn't end as everyone hoped. But I think that kind of left a blemish on him. But by no means is this guy not a freaking unbelievable coach. Knows what he's doing. Probably sort of unfairly was let go of in Boston. But Houston is super happy about that. The Rockets front office must be ecstatic because they found themselves a really, really good one in coach. So he's got them playing hard. But all of that said, I am going with the Warriors in 7. I just think I can't pick against Golden State. If they lose, I'll happily eat crow on that one. But I'm going with them over the Rockets. I think they're favored in the series according to the Vegas odds, which is no shock. But just their history against Houston, even all the way back to when Harden, Westbrook, Chris Paul was there. They just kind of own these guys. They find a way to beat Houston often. I feel as though they've played Houston more than any other team in the West during their stretch of Western Conference title run. So I am just going with Golden State just off of my gut, my heart. But I do feel a little nervous about it. I think Houston's playing really well, and I think they have a bad rep because they're Houston and haven't been great in the past couple of years since Harden left. But I see them being a real threat, and I see that series going 7 games. So by no means do I think it's going to be easy for Golden State, but I am picking the Warriors to take down the Rockets in 7. And then my last one, if you listened on Tuesday, one of my sleeper teams to win the entire NBA championship is the LA Clippers. I think they're clicking at the right time. As we all know, Kawhi is a freaking cyborg and is just unbelievable. So he's playing well at the right time. James Harden's playing about as good as I've ever seen him. Talk about those years in Houston. He had some awesome seasons, but always kind of had a little bit of fizzle out in the playoffs. So that's the one question mark. You're getting playoff Harden. However, he looks awesome recently, and I watched it against the Warriors in that last regular season game. He's locked in. They're playing well together. He's doing a great job kind of fitting in his role. And again, I think moving Westbrook out of there was the right move for them this year. I think it's kind of unlocked some things in point guard James, and they got all their guys clicking. And Ivica Zubac is going to be a huge matchup in that first round series against the Nuggets and going forward. So I'm picking the Clippers in 6 over Denver. I think Jokic might average a freaking 60, 15, and 15 for the series. I think he's going to go nuts. However, I just don't trust Denver after the Mike Malone firing. Jamal Murray, he came back to play, but he's been hurt for weeks, months, and so it's kind of a what's going on there type of situation. I think going into the playoffs with that type of mentality and just vibe around the team is not a good thing. And the Clippers are about as scary as an opponent as you can have right now. They are playing by far their best basketball this season here, the last couple of weeks of the year. So I would be terrified of them if I'm the Nuggets. Obviously, you got to go up against Jokic, but I think Zubac will help kind of negate what he can do. Obviously, you're not going to stop Jokic to any extent, to a full extent, but to slow him down a little bit, I think Zubac can be successful, and they're going to need him to be because they have no freaking size after Zubac. I think it's Ben Simmons is playing center for them when he goes out, so they're going to need him to play 40 minutes and match Jokic, 35 minutes and match Jokic, but overall, I think Jokic is going to get his, but I just don't think that the Nuggets are going to have enough as a team to take down the Los Angeles Clippers. So my West, I've got the Clippers over Denver in 6, Golden State over Houston in 7, Lakers over Minnesota in 5, and then Oklahoma City over whoever that 8 seed is. I'm going to say it here in 4. I think they're going to blitz them and be done with it. So those are my NBA predictions. We'll obviously check in as these series are going on and see how they're looking for me, see where I'm doing. And then we'll know at the end of the first round. We'll make round 2 predictions just like we did here today. So thank you so much for being with us. This was episode 2 of Below the Rim Basketball. I am your host, Quinn Carey. Again, if you like this content that I'm putting out, if you don't like it, if you hate it, still like, subscribe, comment on these videos. Let me hear from you. Let me get some feedback. I'm anxious to hear about it. Would love to hear from you guys. So thank you again. If you're watching this, much, much, much appreciated. You are awesome, and I really can't thank you enough. And until next week, we'll see you on Tuesday.